my farm is Prairie Gardens, an adventure farm. I've been at this since I was 22 years old. So imagine a 22-year-old fresh out of college, took horticulture, and I wanted to grow things. And food just happened to be what it was. And so we started growing broccoli the first year. And we got involved with a co-op, and we were growing broccoli. And boy, I discovered that maybe broccoli really wasn't my cup of tea. And so I learned. Eventually, we had a U-pick at our farm, and that's really where we shone. We love to have people come to our farm. We love to engage people at our farm. And when they came, they said, this is great fun. And they really loved showing their kids where strawberries grew. And so we rolled along like that for quite a number of years. So I've done this now for 33 years. And 5 years ago, we launched a CSA. Now, I'd heard about CSAs way back when I was in my 20s, but I really didn't feel like I had enough skill to be able to grow food to put on people's tables reliably. So 30 years later, almost, I felt, you know what, I do have this skill. I can grow food. And we launched our CSA for the first time. So what CSA is anybody familiar? Community supported agriculture. Anybody belong to a CSA? One or two? Good. So it's a notion where your community supports your farm by buying a share of the harvest in advance of the season. And so from a farming perspective, it's brilliant because you can plan. You can buy your seeds, you can work out your crop logistics, you can figure out how many tomatoes and of what variety you're going to grow and grow for them. So there's very little waste. And you're very focused on meeting a good food box once a week. And so we ran our CSA starting in April, and we also have a greenhouse so we could involve them in the planting season. What we discovered was that people who are investing in the farm, from that perspective of a CSA buying a share of the harvest at the beginning of the season, were really keen to learn and to become a part of a community at the farm. And so that's where the success for us lies. With the CSA, because our people who support the farm buy a share of the harvest before the season, there's a notion of shared risk. And so not only shared bounty, but shared risk in case of crop failure or hailstorm or frost or drought, whatever the case may be. And so we went into this thinking to ourselves, you know what, we got this. We can grow things here. I know we can grow food on this beautiful black topsoil that we have on our 25-acre farm. And so the very first year was a 1 in 200 year drought. And we thought, holy cow, we have people expecting food every week. And what are we going to do? So it really brought a tremendous resilience from us, because as farming people, we know how to grow things, we know what things needed to grow, but the weather just wasn't cooperating. And so we'd seeded all these beautiful gardens, we worked out how many rows of beans and a successive planting schedule so that we would have crop for these good food baskets once a week without fail, and nothing grew. Nothing came out of the ground. And so we thought, well, we're farmers, we're the kind of people that others trust. Second only to doctors, farmers have the highest trust rating across Canada. And so we were not about to lose that trust. And we started seeding things inside and in the greenhouses and growing crops that we'd never tried before. And so we found that we were growing kamasuna and mizunas and Japanese vegetables and Chinese vegetables, because upon reading the catalog, it was like ready in 35 days. I'm like, yes, we need that. And so we got through it, and we found that it finally did rain. The crops did come. They were a little bit late, but because we had involved our community all the way through from seed to harvest and engaged them with newsletters and had them come out to the farm for potlucks and had them come out to the farm to learn how to plant. Some actually came to help us weed. I was so excited. But they were part of the process. And when they're part of the process, And just, I've heard it a few times, you know, skin in the game or invested interest, things work out better for everyone. And so that's partly what we did with our role at the CSA. What we've discovered with the CSA now that we're in year 5 is that we have a really strong group of a community, really, that wants to see the farm succeed. When we survey our CSA members and say, why did you join up to a CSA? Almost invariably, it's because they want to support a local farm. That's like number 1, 2, or 3 every single time. Part of it is because they'd like for their children to see where food grows and how it grows, and to be involved in that process from the ground up, from the soil and the seeding in the spring all the way through the season to the harvest at the end. And so many of the families have such wonderful stories of being on the farm. And when we engage people in that way and share with them our life in rural Alberta, and growing food, there's a little bit of magic that happens. And there was a gal, for example, she had 3 or 4 little kids that she brought out to the farm regularly. And we were weeding onions one day, and along came the big black thunderstorm, and the rain just poured down. But, you know, we didn't want to leave our row until we were done. And so everybody came in out of the field like mud, right? And soaked. And she said, months after, Tam, that was the best day of our whole summer together, out there with you on the farm. And so I now become known as Farmer Tam. And I always know when I have a CSA family member at the farm, because I get this run, hug, Farmer Tam! And, you know, someone's giving me a leg hug, and it's like, what's going on at the farm? And so as a way for funding, you know, to have that money come in at the beginning of the season, it's a really nice way to start. We bought some garlic this year from a fella who has a CSA down by Red Deer. His name is Mike, and he has, I believe it's Steel Pony Farms. And he said that he went to university, young fellow, much like some of you in the audience, and found himself in Africa, sitting around a fire after he'd graduated, talking with some villagers. And they were talking about food that night, and they were talking about farming, because if you don't farm, you don't eat. And he said it was quite a revelation to him, because he had never, ever considered the food system that we have in Canada. And so they went around the fire one after another and said, how, you know, what do you grow on your farm? And he said, I don't grow on a farm. And they were like, how do you eat? And he said, well, I go to the grocery store. And they said, what do they farm? And he said, I don't know. I don't think they grow anything. And they said, how is that possible? How do you eat? And so he came home from Africa with this determination to learn more about our food system in Canada. And he landed in Quebec. And he's apprenticed at a CSA farm in Quebec and learned about how to grow food. And then he came back to Alberta, and he thought to himself, I'm going to be a farmer, and I'm going to grow food. I'm going to walk the walk. And the first roadblock he came to was land and land prices. And he said, I can't buy land at $5,000 an acre and start a farm. I just don't have the capital to do it. And so he came up with a really innovative strategy, I thought. And he was talking to another farmer who had a large tract of land, and he said, you know, I really want to do this so bad. Can I rent your land? And the farmer said, yes, I will rent you 10 acres of land. Hardly noticeable, really, for a big farm. Our average farm in Alberta right now is 3,000 acres. And up from there, in our area in Bonaccord, we have a farmer who farms over 30,000 acres. And so he was given the ability to rent the land. And then he said, so there I was. I needed to, you know, do this, so I had to somehow get a tractor. So he found a small tractor that he could buy, and he spent all of his money. And he said, so I wanted to still grow food, and I started this thought of a CSA. And so he had his group of people invest, and he had money for seed. He had money for some marketing, And away he went. And he said the very first year, he used the tractor only in the field and used his bicycle to get the food to the drop point for the CSA. And he said on the 5th week of market, when the potatoes came ready and he realized that he had 500 pounds of potatoes, he was riding his bike. He said the next investment he had to buy was a truck. 5 years later, I'm buying garlic from him. He's very successful, so he's launched himself as a beginner farmer with a CSA program, so a guaranteed market for his product, guaranteed money up front, so everybody's in it to help him grow, as well as he's got skin in the game because he has to make sure he gets those good food baskets out every week. He now has arranged with another farmer a larger tract of land, and they work collaboratively together. One of them supplies the protein to the CSA, and he now supplies the vegetables. So when I'm speaking sometimes, as I do to high school students who come out to the farm and they're involved in urban agriculture classes, I always ask, how many of you think you might like to be a farmer someday? And out of a group of 20, invariably it's 0, none. And so I said, why is it that you haven't thought, any of you, of ever growing food? Do you not eat food every day? Do you not think it's important in our world that we have food growers? And they're like, yeah, we really do, but we have like really it's not even on the radar for them, even in a farming community of Bonnecourt or Morinville or Gibbons, where we know that some of them come from farm families. It's too big of a scale, and so this is a way that they can wrap their heads around becoming a farmer, small scale, growing food, creating enough revenue for themselves to create a living for it, and growing so that they can keep moving on with it. In our case, with our CSA at our farm, it's a small part of our revenue stream, and Terry, my husband, and I, we also farm a bigger farm. And he said, really, when we bought that land, the key strategy was to have diverse income streams. And so he grows wheat, and I grow 150 different kinds of vegetables. And together, we make it work. And the diversity gives us revenue at different times of season. And it also shares, it doesn't share the risk, but it spreads the risk out so that we never have all of our eggs in one basket. And so the CSA is part of our overall sustainability program, and it's a small part. And then from that, we've now grown and have restaurants that belong to our CSA, and we have chefs. And so the chefs now have at first, it was CSA, and now the chefs actually support us with higher revenue stream than the CSA does. But we need the two together because it doesn't make sense to just grow for a chef because you have waste. So if we can combine those two thoughts, because as the farmer, you're selecting what goes in those good food baskets every week. If you have something ready now and the chef isn't using it in their restaurant this week, it goes into the CSA basket. And then we learn from growing the CSA baskets the timing and what grows well and what tastes wonderful, and then we bring that learning back to the chefs and go, chefs, try this. And there's nothing that delights me more than to walk around the garden with a chef in tow. And I was like, try this, try that. And he's sampling mizuna and kamasuna and wasabi arugula and herbs and edible flowers. And so that whole diversity makes the system work. And then in addition to that, we have tourism. We have agritourism at our farm. And so we bring not only people to the farm to learn about farming while they're having fun at a pumpkin fest or a corn fest or picking strawberries, we also bring kids out to the farm. And what I've really learned, there's such a huge disconnect between the little guys and where food comes from and being on a farm that you couldn't even imagine. And so my favorite example always is we're walking past the crabapple trees in the fall and all these beautiful red things in the trees, and I'm like, boys and girls, what's ready to pick? And they're like, strawberries! And you're like, no, those are apples in the trees. and you've never seen kids so yearning to be connected back to the land and back to the earth until you've seen a class of kindergarten students digging potatoes for the first time in their lives. And if you send them out to the field, they'll come back to you and they'll say, there's no potatoes. And you go, oh, but there are. And then away you go and you show them the plants. And they'll pull the plants out of the ground and they're like, oh, there's no potatoes. And you're like, oh, my work's cut out for me. And so then the fork comes out and you dig. And as soon as those potatoes start coming up from the earth, that good black topsoil that we live and breathe on every day, those kids' faces turn into like amazing excitement, and the potatoes, and they're digging and grabbing and they're putting them in. Can we take them home? And we're like, yes, you can. So just the fact that plants can grow and make food for us, and to connect with them through our CSA program is just such a bonus. And we start with families. Sometimes our families stay with us forever, and we've got some CSA members that have been with us for the full 5 years. We have others that just come for a couple of years, learn something, and then take it back home and grow food in their own backyards. And I think that's a success as well. And so CSA program opens the doors in many, many ways. And we've really enjoyed it and love to share the story. And so if any of you have questions, love to have those questions. Thanks so much.